Welcome to the Pregnancy Help News Brief. I'm Lisa Bourne, Managing Editor of Pregnancy Help News. Here's a look at some of this month's top stories. Chemical abortion dominated the headlines this last month as HHS and FDA announced plans to review the abortion pill safety protocols. The FDA quietly approved a new abortion drug, and 51 senators urged the FDA and HHS to reassess the new abortion drug's approval. Further, California Governor Gavin Newsom signed a law allowing anonymous abortion prescriptions. Better news had Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett telling a Texas crowd why Roe v. Wade was wrong. And Virginia parents are put on alert regarding an upcoming vote that will affect parental rights in the Commonwealth. Now let's take a closer look at this month's top stories. Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Food and Drug Administration Commissioner Martin McCary sent letters to certain state attorneys general in September informing them that the FDA will be conducting a full review of the safety of the abortion pill. 6 pro-life groups asked HHS and the FDA over the summer to reinstate abortion pill safeguards, which had been loosened significantly under the Biden administration. Over 20 state AGs did this as well. Kennedy and McCary have since sent a letter in apparent response to these AGs, notifying them that a full safety review would be conducted into the abortion pill. Pro-life and pregnancy help advocates have long called for a review of the abortion pill because of how risky chemical abortions are for women. The Food and Drug Administration approved a new generic version of mifepristone on October 3rd. Weeks after saying that a review of the abortion pill was in progress, the FDA approved the application of a new mifepristone producer, Avita Solutions, according to a letter sent to the company. Health and Human Services personnel have said that the FDA has very limited discretion in deciding whether to approve a generic drug, and that, by law, the Secretary of Health and Human Services must approve an application if it demonstrates that the generic drug is identical to the brand name drug. Pro-life groups and members of Congress roundly denounced the approval of a new generic for mifepristone. In addition to confirming in a September 19th letter to Republican attorneys general that the FDA is conducting its own review of the evidence, including real-world outcomes and evidence, relating to the safety and efficacy of the drug, Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. had also said during a hearing in September that the Biden administration had twisted the data to bury one of the safety signals for mifepristone. "51 U.S. senators wrote to Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and Food and Drug Administration Commissioner Marty McCary October 9th, urging suspension of the recently approved generic chemical abortion drug and reinstatement of prior safety standards for mifepristone. Quote, "The abortion-on-demand culture enabled by the Biden-Harris administration's removal of critical safeguards on the only FDA-approved abortion regimen is currently the biggest threat to unborn life in America today," end quote, the senators said in their letter. Led by South Carolina Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, the group commended the federal agency's acknowledgement and commitment to reevaluating the standards of chemical abortion drugs, but also called for specific action to keep women safer. The group of senators recommended the following actions to Kennedy and McCary. First, to suspend the approval of any new generic versions of mifepristone pending the outcome of the REMS safety review. Second, commit to ensuring that all generic versions of mifepristone are included in the ongoing reevaluation of prior REMS approvals. Third, reinstate the in-person dispensing requirement for mifepristone in all its generic versions. Fourth, suspend the distribution of mifepristone in all generic versions as an imminent hazard. And fifth, withdraw FDA guidance permitting pharmacy distribution of mifepristone in all its generic versions. The group of senators said in their statement, quote, "We continue to urge the FDA to reinstate the full REMS safeguards to help protect women and ensure real medical oversight," end quote. California Governor Gavin Newsom signed AB 260 into law September 26th. The law protects the distribution of abortion drugs like mifepristone while shielding providers with anonymity. AB 260 allows pharmacists to dispense abortion pills without including the prescriber's name or pharmacy information on the label, making it nearly impossible for women, parents, or law enforcement to know who is responsible when complications occur. The bill also requires insurance plans to cover abortion drugs, even if federal approval changes, and empowers California agencies to ignore federal restrictions on these drugs. The new law took immediate effect and gives California doctors cover when prescribing abortion drugs, shielding them from out-of-state lawsuits connected to chemical abortions. The law indicates that the state of California is prioritizing the abortion industry over women, leaving women more vulnerable. Supreme Court Justice Amy Coney Barrett defended her vote to overturn Roe v. Wade during a recent speech in Texas. Justice Barrett said abortion didn't pass a test of being a key right founded in the Constitution and, quote, firmly rooted in the history and traditions of the American people, end quote. She was giving the speech to promote her book, Listening to the Law, Reflections on the Court and Constitution. Justice Barrett said, quote, Dobbs laid out the evidence to demonstrate that Roe was incorrect to say that a right to terminate a pregnancy had been deeply rooted in the history and tradition of the American people, end quote. Justice Barrett was appointed by President Trump during his first term and confirmed to the court in 2020, replacing the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Thomas More Society attorneys announced they will file a civil suit and seek damages on behalf of pro-life advocate Savannah Craven Antow against her assailant Brianna Rivers after Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg's office failed to prosecute a felony assault charge against Rivers. Rivers assaulted Savannah in April 2025 with several blows to the face while the pro-life advocate was filming a woman on the street interview for pro-life advocacy group Live Action. The entire assault was recorded on video and went viral on social media, leading to Rivers' arrest by the NYPD and her being charged with second-degree assault. After her arrest, Rivers launched a GoFundMe to fundraise for her defense. In a shocking twist, with no explanation from DA Bragg's office, Savannah learned that the charge against Rivers was downgraded to a misdemeanor and later completely dismissed. Thomas More Society attorneys have repeatedly witnessed a disturbing double standard in the enforcement of justice when it comes to violence directed at pro-lifers. Most recently, a young man in Baltimore walked away with a slap on the wrist after brutally assaulting two elderly pro-lifers praying outside a Planned Parenthood. Meanwhile, pro-life advocates like Mark Houck and Paul Vaughn, whose actions were rooted in peaceful defense of the unborn, faced the full weight of federal prosecution under the Biden administration, had their homes raided by armed agents in front of their families, and faced severe prison sentences. Virginia's General Assembly is in the process of amending its state constitution. Should it pass, this amendment will guarantee the right to abortion to every individual, with no distinction between adults and children. Virginia law currently requires either parental or guardian permission or judicial bypass prior to a minor's abortion. The proposed amendment mentions neither of these safeguards. The tricky part is that the amendment won't even look like parental rights are on the ballot, just the names of candidates. But behind every name on the ballot for the Virginia House of Delegates is a person who will vote in January 2026 to either approve the so-called right to abortion or oppose it. Virginia voters choose the delegates, and in January, they will vote on this amendment. The amendment's lean language leaves room for broad interpretation in the form of underage abortions with no language requiring parental consent. Virginia parents are encouraged to head to the polls on November 4th and tell the Commonwealth's politicians that they will not be removed from the care of their children in this area. That's the news for this episode of the Pregnancy Help News Brief. All of these stories and more are available to you 24/7 at pregnancyhelpnews.com. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Pregnancy Help News Brief on the Pregnancy Help Podcast. I'm Lisa Bourne. Subscribe to receive updates on future episodes.